Hi, I'm Sleep Aid, your local sleep paralysis demon, and today we're looking at Exposure, a webcomic by Pokefighter. And if you would like to submit your comic for review, you can do so on the Reddit post, which is linked in the description. Now then, let's go ahead and have a look at this. It is a drama short story. I'll read the description and then we'll discuss the actual comic. It says, in an underground nightclub, two strangers are looking for escape. What they find in each other is not salvation, but a slow undoing. A short comic completed in 24 episodes with 3 bonus stories. So, that essentially sums up the entire thing. It is a very short read. It has 24 episodes, but they are mostly not very long. Many of them are under 10 panels, and so it's really, really quick to get through it. And it is the type of comic that tells you a very short and simple story that is fairly easy to grasp and very, very quickly digested. And so I would say that overall, I think it does a very good job of what it's trying to do, which is essentially a character study on avoidant attachment. And so we have our two characters that meet in a apparently illegal nightclub where a lot of questionable substances are going around. They hit it off pretty quickly, and then they spend several nights together just doing various heinous things and drugs and high adrenaline things and whatnot. And so after a little while of this, the girl tries to initiate a deeper relationship, feeling like things are finally starting to work out, but the guy in the situation, Simon, hasn't really opened up at all, and so she's concerned that he's just blocking her out, and she wants to know more about him and get to connect on a deeper level. But he's convinced that if that happens, it will cause the relationship to collapse, and he'll end up hurting her, or things won't work out. And so ultimately, because he refuses to get attached to her any further than that, the relationship does collapse. And he goes back to the bar and goes back to even harder substances, and it all begins again. This is the type of comic that, it's the type of story, I think perhaps the only shortcoming of it that I could really point out is it doesn't really go deep into explaining what the theme is and what essentially it's studying. And so it's the type of thing that if you have experience with it, if you are yourself avoidant or you have, experience with people who are, then you'll get it right away. And it's pretty easy to grasp and follow and understand. But for people that don't really know much about that or don't have much experience with that, it may feel inconclusive. It may, I feel like if you lack the context for what's being shown in these characters, it may be kind of hard to get it. It might just feel unsatisfying. And so I don't think that it needs to hit you over the head with explanations and monologues and long, extensive explanations of what exactly the point is. It's that type of thing that this is a story that's written for a very particular audience, and it's ultimately going to be people that kind of understand what the subject matter is, because it's not going to hold your hand and break it down for you. It kind of just expects you to already have an idea. And so if you do understand it, I think it works very well. And I think it showcases something that for a lot of people will be very relatable. And what's interesting is, as a reader, I feel like I do kind of get it, which adds a little bit more intrigue to it for me, because we watch as Simon, essentially, in fear of destroying his relationship, he actually destroys his relationship. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, whereas in his mind, he thinks that if he opens up, it's going to cause more problems. He's just going to end up hurting her and ruin the relationship. And so the alternative is he refuses to open up, and thus he ruins the relationship anyway. And then he walks away from it, still feeling like he's the one that caused all the problems. And in a way, he's kind of right in both cases. And so if he does actually open up and be vulnerable with this person, it could, potentially cause things to go poorly, because when you're effectively putting up a wall, putting up a stone front, and never really opening up who you are to a person, and then all of a sudden you start doing that, it changes the dynamic, and things might not work as well as they did before you truly knew who each other were. But at the same time, if you refuse to do that, and all you ever want is a surface level situation, then that also ultimately can't last. And so he's kind of in a situation where he's convinced himself that there's no way to win, and so he just chooses how to lose. And interestingly, I think the ending, it's a little bit open-ended, because there's a positive way you could interpret it or a negative way. But he goes back to the club, he starts doing heroin, an even harder substance than what he's been shown to be doing earlier on. But while shooting up with another person, they start flirting in the bathroom. That person gives him their number, and he looks at it, and this is the moment where essentially the cycle is about to start all over again. He's going to get involved with another damaged person and probably go through this exact process again, having a relationship that works fairly well, and then ultimately self-destructing for some reason. And in the end, he decides to not do that. He throws the number away. And there's a couple of ways you can interpret that. He's either reached a point where he's fully giving up, so he's not even going to bother starting the cycle again. He's closing himself off even further, or maybe potentially he sees kind of where this is going and decides to play things differently this time. But I think it more likely it's the negative. It seems more like a negative outcome personally, but it's kind of fun to speculate on. And so that's where, like I said, I think that this comic kind of delivers its message in a pretty simple and straightforward fashion that works really well if it's the type of situation that you already kind of have an understanding of. Whereas, again, if this isn't something that you've dealt with before, I think it would feel like a bit more of a difficult read, just because it doesn't really hold your hand at all. It just shows you how things go for this character. And so I feel like there's not a whole lot to say about it beyond that, because it is very brief. It's worth pointing out the art's very good. I mean, you've seen it scrolling in the background. The art's very good. There's a great sense of lighting, and the way the scenes play out it's very well paced. It doesn't waste too much time. It gets right to the point, and it only dwells on things as long as they need to be dwelled on to get the point across. And so yeah, I would honestly consider this very successful. I feel like it accomplishes what it was setting out to accomplish. It was an entertaining read. It was interesting. It was thought-provoking, and in some ways it was relatable. And I think that it is a very, very grounded and character-driven work that stays interesting the entire duration and feels entirely believable. And so this shows a good sense of character writing. And drama, and tension, and pacing. And so I think that as a short story, it does a lot to sell the quality of the writing. And this type of small, emotional, character-driven story, I think is something that I don't see too much of, but more than anything, it kind of tells me that the creator of this probably will do other great works as well. There are still 3 more episodes coming out on this comic, but I do look forward to seeing what comes after this, because the style of writing, I think, works very well. So it definitely shows a level of linguistic maturity, and that lack of fear of being a little bit vague. It knows just how much to explain and just how long to dwell on things. And yeah, I think there's a certain level of skill in that, and I look forward to reading more things by this creator. And also, of course, the 3 epilogue episodes. I will say I don't know if this comic would be improved by the epilogues, which apparently are going to kind of just explore the way the relationship was. I suppose if the 3 additional episodes all kind of have a similar theme that helps serve the broader message, the broader story, then it could be improved by that, but it almost feels complete enough as it is, and so I'll be curious to see what those additional chapters add. Since it is such a simple premise. Ultimately, though, I would say I very much enjoyed it, and as I said, I look forward to reading more from this creator. So, all around, I would say good job. There weren't any formatting issues. All the text was easy to read. All the panels were well laid out. The scenes flowed. The lighting was good. The art was good. The message worked for me. And I think it was just a very good comic. I don't really know what else to say than that. And so I would probably recommend it. If you know what the words avoidant attachment mean, then it's probably worth the read. And if you don't, give it a look at least for the art, and maybe you'll learn something. Regardless, yeah, I thought it was well done. So, at the risk of rambling on anymore, I'll leave it at that. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in your nightmares.